Welcome back, sports fans. My name is Libby Williams, and you are watching episode 6 of Necessary Roughness. I couldn't, in good conscience, not recap Wild Card Weekend. Considering the dramatic upsets and enthralling outcomes, I will present to you an overview of each game and 3 key takeaways as to how these teams can unlock divisional round success. With that being said, I want to dive right in and discuss the Indianapolis Colts at Buffalo Bills game. Quarterback Josh Allen and safety Micah Hyde teamed up to make Buffalo Bills losing past history. Now do you believe? See what I did there? In a season in which the Bills busted numerous slumps, Allen became Buffalo's first starter in a quarter century to win a playoff game. And Hyde ensured the Bills wouldn't endure another second half collapse as happened last year in a wildcard loss to Houston, or last second touchdown. With Buffalo the AFC East champions for the first time since 1995 and hosting their first playoff game since 96, Allen threw 2 touchdown passes and scored another rushing and leading the Bills to a 27-24 win over the Indianapolis Colts in a wildcard game Saturday. Here are my key takeaways. That was a fumble. I mean, you guys know. Pascal caught a 17-yard pass, hit the ground, then stood up when Milano and Poyer ripped the ball away, and the Bills recovered. He was ruled down by contact, and the Colts lined up for another play. Head coach Sean McDermott smartly called a timeout to give the replay official time to buzz the game official. Well, they said the play on the field stands, and the Colts had a last gasp. Ultimately, the Bills were able to force 3 straight incompletions to end the game. Starting field position was a problem. The Bills had a hard time getting the offense going in the first half, and a big part of that was terrible starting field position. The first half saw starts at the 3, 15, 11, 6, and 4. The second half wasn't anything impressive, but it was a considerable improvement from the first half with starts at the 28, 23, 25, and 24. Great. The Bills showed they deserved to be in the playoffs. They beat a team with a seasoned NFL QB and a seasoned NFL play caller and head coach. They didn't get many breaks. They didn't get a lot of opportunities. They did just enough. They only had 4 drives in the second half and scored on 3 of them to secure the victory. The Los Angeles Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. Quietly, Aaron Darnold, Jared Goff, and the rest of the Los Angeles Rams seethed. They watched less than 2 weeks ago as the Seattle Seahawks loudly celebrated a division title the Rams felt they gave away. Los Angeles desperately wanted another shot. Behind a lot of Cam Akers churning yards on the ground and mostly a great defense, the Rams are moving on in the NFC playoffs at the expense of the Seahawks. Here are my key takeaways. Jared Goff showed guts. Goff didn't have the best season. In fact, it was barely better than his unimpressive 2019 campaign. But he came through in the clutch for the Rams on Saturday afternoon with 155 yards and a touchdown against the Seahawks, all in relief of John Wolford, who got the start at quarterback. Goff only completed 9 passes on 19 attempts, but he didn't turn it over. He didn't try to do too much, and his 15-yard touchdown pass to Robert Woods was the icing on the cake in the fourth quarter. He showed remarkable toughness to battle through a thumb injury, admitting after the game that he wasn't 100%. Cam Akers is exactly what the Rams hoped he'd be. The Rams drafted Akers to be their workhorse back, eventually. They didn't know when he would become that, considering they also have Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown. But Akers has officially arrived as elite in LA. He carried the ball 28 times for 131 yards and a touchdown against a strong Seahawks defense, picking up hard-fought yards in all directions. He also added 48 yards receiving, including a 44-yard reception where he kept his balance and picked up big yardage after the catch. He was an absolute stud, just as Sean McVay said after the game. Without him, the Rams would probably be home watching the playoffs next week. Rams can beat anyone with this defense. In today's NFL, the phrase, Defense wins championships doesn't ring as true as it used to, but for the Rams, it might still apply. They held one of the NFL's best quarterbacks to 174 yards on 11 for 27 passing, bottling up Russell Wilson for 60 minutes. Wilson completed only 8 of 18 passes against standard pass rushes, which was his lowest completion rate against 4 pass rushers in a game since 2017, also against the Rams. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Washington Football Team. New team, same valiant playoff success for Tom Brady. Brady threw for 381 yards and 2 touchdowns to lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers past Washington 31-23 in their NFC wildcard game Saturday night for their first playoff victory since the 2002 season. Brady was critical of his play and the offense's performance in the red zone, but relished picking up his 31st career postseason win. In his 42nd postseason start and first not in a New England Patriots uniform, Brady made the most of a lack of early pressure to build a lead against the NFL's second-ranked defense that held up. Here are my key takeaways. Brady outdueled Washington's Tyler Heinickie. Heinickie had a breakout performance in just his second pro start and first in the playoffs in place of injured starter Alex Smith. Heinickie, signed in early December to the practice squad, ran for 46 yards and a touchdown and threw for 306 yards and a score. With Smith out because of a strained right calf, Heinickie made a name for himself in primetime, setting the single-game franchise rushing record for quarterbacks and raising the question of whether he should be considered Washington's QB of the future. But Heinickie wasn't enough to overcome Brady's off-and-on brilliance. While Bill Belichick and the Patriots watched from home with their playoff streak snapped at 11 following a 7-9 season, Brady has the opportunity to play in yet another Super Bowl in his new home stadium. Age doesn't matter. Brady, who at 43 years, 159 days, passed George Blanda as the oldest player to throw a touchdown pass in a playoff game. A 36-yard scoring connection with Antonio Brown was Brady's longest in the playoffs since 2011. Brady was methodical in the first half with 12 completions for 209 yards and wasn't sacked until the final minute of the second quarter. Bucs receivers. Brown has a touchdown catch in 4 consecutive games dating to the regular season, tying the second longest streak in franchise history. Mike Evans owns the record at 6 games and was Tampa Bay's top receiver against Washington with 6 catches for 119 yards. Maybe there's something about playing at FedEx Field that brings out the best in Brown. In his only other game at Washington in 2016 with Pittsburgh, he had 8 catches for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Baltimore Ravens at the Tennessee Titans. Lamar Jackson finally has his first postseason victory, and on the road, no less. Combine that with Baltimore's smothering 2,000-yard rush Derrick Henry, and the Ravens look playoff tough. Jackson ran for 136 yards and a 48-yard touchdown while throwing for 179 more as the Ravens rallied from 10 points down and beat the Tennessee Titans 2013 in their AFC wildcard game. Baltimore also held Tennessee to its fewest points all season. Here are my key takeaways. Narratives are squashed. Lamar Jackson can't win a playoff game. The Ravens can't come from behind. Derrick Henry owns the Ravens. What's better than squashing one narrative? How about squashing 3? For the better part of the last year or so, these 3 recurring narratives have hung over the Ravens like a looming storm cloud. Almost every national conversation surrounding the Ravens has eventually circled back to this conversation. Now, at long last, they can finally be put to bed. In defeating the Titans, the Ravens overcame a 10-0 deficit in the first quarter, contained Derrick Henry in a huge way, and of course, Lamar Jackson won his first playoff game. The monkey is officially off the Ravens' back. Lamar Jackson exorcises the demons. For someone who just turned 24 years old days ago, Lamar Jackson has already established himself as one of the most polarizing players in the NFL. It was hard not to be nervous early in this game as flashbacks to last year's debacle in the divisional round slowly crept into play. Between simple throws in the flats, a few long connections to Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews, and a handful of long rushes, Jackson put together a winning performance. 17 of 24, 179 passing yards, 16 rushes, and 136 rushing yards, the second highest rushing yardage total of his career. How's that for a return on investment? After ceding 195 rushing yards to Derrick Henry in the postseason last year, the Ravens made beefing up the defensive line a priority. Nobody in the organization will outright say this was a direct response to Henry's playoff performance, but there's little doubting that it certainly played a role in the offseason strategy. In trading for Calais Campbell and signing Derek Wolfe in free agency, the hope was that adding them alongside Brandon Williams on the defensive line would help the Ravens be better prepared in a potential rematch with Henry and the Titans. In the Titans' Week 11 victory over the Ravens earlier this season, Henry rushed for over 130 yards, but Campbell and Williams were inactive with injuries. So we had yet to see whether or not the Ravens' strategy would be vindicated heading into Sunday's match. The results? Positive, to say the least. The Chicago Bears at the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees will get to celebrate his 42nd birthday by preparing for a playoff game that will also feature the one active NFL quarterback older than him. Brees completed 28 of 39 passes for 265 yards, connecting with Michael Thomas and Latavius Murray for touchdowns, and the New Orleans Saints defeated the Chicago Bears 21-9 in an NFC wildcard game Sunday. The victory for the Saints and Brees, who turns 42 on Friday, sets up a divisional round meeting next weekend in the Superdome with Tampa Bay and 43-year-old QB Tom Brady. The Saints won each regular season matchup with NFC South rival by double digits. Here are my key takeaways. Don't underestimate the Saints defense. The Saints powered to the win off a great day by their defense. They didn't allow a Bears third down conversion until after the 2-minute warning, going 58 minutes without yielding a fresh set of downs. That's as impressive as it gets, even before you consider their performance against the run. Chicago only gained 48 rushing yards. And the pass. The Bears picked up just 199 yards through the air. The defensive front controlled the line, swallowing David Montgomery and Chicago's run game, and pestered Mitchell Trubisky at every turn. Meanwhile, the back end suffocated Allen Robinson, giving the Bears QB nowhere to go with the ball. They'll need that strong defensive play to finish a 3-game sweep of Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. The Bears' offense was miserable. Javon Wims missed a perfect deep shot early from Trubisky that should have gone for a 40-yard touchdown. It was Trubisky's best ball of the game, and Wims flat dropped it. From there, the QB looked deflated. On the same drive, he made a half-hearted effort to convert a 4th down. In what quite possibly could be his final game in a Bears jersey, Trubisky completed 10 of 19 passes for a measly 107 yards, 5.6 yards per attempt, before the final drive. The QB looked flummoxed by the Saints defense and got no help. The Saints offense is fully loaded. Michael Thomas returned from injured reserve and immediately made his presence felt, leading an opening quarter touchdown drive with a score. With Thomas in the lineup, Deontay Harris was freed up for a career game. The shifty wideout caught 7 targets for 83 yards, including a plethora of chain movers. Alvin Kamara also returned from the reserve COVID-19 list. It took a bit, but the running back kicked it into gear in the second half, compiling 99 rushing yards, a touchdown, and added 2 catches for 17 yards. Facing the Bucs next week, the Saints offense will have to be crisper to get out of the divisional round. Sunday was a good time to get the gang back together and knock off the rust against an 8-win club that backed its way into the playoffs. The Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So much for the weight of history, or practicing, or having your head coach on the sideline, or an emotional leader on the field. The Cleveland Browns overcame all of it. The burden of carrying the mantle of a franchise that's long been a punchline. A schedule ravaged by COVID-19 outbreak. A rival that for years has treated them like a harmless little brother. All of that's over, for now, and maybe for good. The Browns dismantled the Pittsburgh Steelers 48-37 in the wild card round Sunday night, picking up the franchise's first postseason victory in more than a quarter century and earning a trip to Kansas City next Sunday to face the defending Super Bowl champions. Here are my key takeaways. A team effort. Cleveland raced to the biggest first half by a road team in NFL playoff history, then held on. Mayfield threw for 263 yards and 3 touchdowns, including a screen pass that Nick Chubb turned into a 40-yard score that halted Pittsburgh's momentum after the Steelers pulled within 12. Kareem Hunt added 48 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, while Cleveland's defense forced 5 turnovers to hand the Steelers a staggering loss. The victory was the Browns' first postseason triumph of any kind since beating New England on New Year's Day, 1995, 3 months before Mayfield was born, and their first playoff win on the road since December 28, 1969. Overcoming adversity. Cleveland did it despite practicing just once over the last 2 weeks and having lost 17 straight at Heinz Field. The Browns did it with efficiency and swagger, and they did it with Pfeiffer at the controls and offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt taking over the play-calling duties as Stefanski watched it in his basement back in Ohio. The Steelers certainly helped, ending a season in which they started 11-0 with a thud that could reverberate for years. Ben Roethlisberger ended his comeback season by throwing for 501 yards on an NFL record 47 completions with 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Protecting the ball was a problem. The glaring issue is that Pittsburgh turned the ball over, and over, and over. And the NFL's third-ranked defense could do little to stem the tide. The Steelers led the NFL in sacks but failed to get to Mayfield. Cleveland's 48 points were the most Pittsburgh has given up in the playoffs, surpassing the 45 to Jacksonville in the 2017 playoffs. Pittsburgh's problems started on the first play from scrimmage when center Marquise Pouncey's snap sailed by Roethlisberger into the end zone. Cleveland's Carl Joseph fell on it for a touchdown. Roethlisberger threw 3 first-half interceptions, 2 of which led directly to Browns scores. By the time the Steelers found their footing, they were down 28-0. Even when they did get it going on a 1-yard touchdown run by James Conner with 1:44 to go in the half, the Browns stormed right back. The Browns will make their first divisional round appearance since the 1994 playoffs when they face the Chiefs. Whew! That was exhausting, albeit very satisfying to recap. This past weekend was filled with dominance, excitement, historical achievements, something in which I absolutely had to cover. With that being said, I certainly hope you learned something and had takeaways of your own from episode 6 of Necessary Roughness. Tune in again for episode 7 that is guaranteed to come very soon. Again, I would like to reiterate that suggestions, recommendations, and topic ideas are always welcome. I am Libby Williams. This is Necessary Roughness. Thank you for watching.